You clicked because the title hit you hard. Viking families lived in homes that should have frozen them solid, yet they survived winter after winter. Tonight you meet one of them. Her name is Brynja, a mother, a wife, a daughter of a long cold valley. She raised 2 children inside a turf roof home packed with smoke, frost, and fear. Each night she woke to ice on the inside walls. Each morning she scraped frozen breath from her children's blankets. One winter, the cold grew sharp enough to crack timber. Neighbors fled, herds died. The river froze solid. Brynja stayed because something inside the walls pressed colder than the air outside. Something she heard walking at night. Something she kept from her children with her own shaking hands. Watch Brynja now. She stands inside her turf roof home with frost on her hair and a dull fire at her feet. Her children sleep wrapped in furs. She holds her breath because she hears something move outside the wall. Not wind, not fox, something heavier. Sharp cold leaks through the cracks. These homes should have frozen families solid, yet Brynja stays upright through nights that silence whole valleys. One winter night, she wakes to ice building around the doorframe. Then she hears the slow press of snow under footsteps. She grips a wooden spoon like a blade. You follow her now. Before we step inside Brynja's frozen home, slow your breath. Drop your shoulders. Let your body soften. Pull a blanket close if you have one. Tell me where you watch from. Each place matters. If these calm Viking stories help your nights, press like or subscribe when you feel ready. Take another slow breath. Let the cold of the valley settle around you without reaching you. Brynja stands alone at the center of her longhouse. Her children sleep. Her fire dims. Something presses against the outer wall. When you feel calm and warm, we enter her story. Brynja woke before dawn, long before any warmth touched the valley. She lay still under a thick fur blanket with her 2 children tucked against her sides. Frost clung to the roof beams above her. Each breath she released turned white. Ice grew along the inside walls in thin ridges. The cold inside her home stayed sharper than the cold outside. Winter had settled over the land with weight she had never felt before. She lifted herself slow so she did not wake the children. Their breath rose in soft clouds. Their cheeks burned red from the night chill. She touched the younger child's forehead, cold but steady. She touched the older one's hand, cold but steady too. She wrapped her cloak around her shoulders and stood, her feet pressed into frozen dirt. The floor held no warmth. She walked to the small fire pit. Only thin embers glowed under ash. She knelt and pressed her hands above them. No heat reached her. She whispered to herself, "Wake." She reached for a small piece of dried grass and placed it on the ember. It did not spark. She leaned closer and blew slow. A faint glow rose. She added another piece, then thin-shaved wood. The ember brightened. She blew again. Smoke rose. She placed a small stick on top of it. The fire came alive in a weak flicker. She fed it more wood until it built a steady flame. She sat back with slow breath. Her fingers stiffened. Her shoulders shook from the cold that clung to her bones through the night. She held her hands above the fire until feeling returned. A soft sound came from behind her. Her older child sat up and looked around. "Mother," he whispered. She turned to him. "You wake early." He wrapped his own fur around his shoulders. "I felt cold in my legs." She motioned him near the fire. "Warm them." He crawled closer and held his feet near the flame. He shivered in small bursts. Brynja looked at the walls again. Frost covered the seams where turf met timber. Thin icicles hung from the roof beams. She reached up and broke one off. Her fingers shook from its sting. She said to her son, "We scraped the walls again today." He nodded. "Ice grows faster now." She looked down at him. His face held the same thought she tried to push from her mind. The cold inside their home thickened each day. The fire felt weaker. The walls felt thinner. The storm outside locked the valley tighter than usual. She walked to the small window slit and pressed her eye against it. Snow covered half the opening. The sky still dark. Wind moved the upper branches of the birch trees. No one walked the village path. No smoke rose from neighbors' longhouses yet. She whispered, "We start soon." Her younger child stirred. She walked back and lifted him from the bedding, his cheeks cold, his hair stiff from frost. She held him close. She walked near the fire and wrapped another fur over him. He leaned into her shoulder. The older child rotated his feet near the flame. "I heard something last night," Brynja turned. "What sound?" "A press," he said. Snow pressed outside, then slow steps along the wall. She looked toward the door. "Where along the wall?" "Near the sleeping place," he said. "Then near the door." Brynja lowered her eyes. She had heard it too. She told herself it was snow sliding from the roof. But the roof held thick frost. Snow stayed frozen in place. Those sounds did not match sliding snow. "Do you hear it now?" she asked. He shook his head. "Only wind." Brynja placed her hand on his shoulder. "We listen each night." He nodded. She set her younger child down and stood again. She walked to the door and touched the thick fur that covered it. The hide felt frozen at the edges. She pushed it aside a little. Cold air rushed in and bit her face. She stepped outside. Snow rose to her knees. The wind struck her cloak. Her breath came out in sharp bursts. She looked around her small yard. The fence post bent under ice weight. The woodpile half buried. Footprints from yesterday's work almost gone under fresh snow. But along the side of the longhouse, where her son said he heard the steps, she saw something. The snow pressed, not wide like human feet, not round like animal paws. A narrow, long shape, deep, firm. One, then another near it, then a third trailing toward the trees. She stepped toward them. She knelt and touched the edge of one print. The snow around it felt hard, the shape too long for dog, too thin for deer, too straight for goat. She whispered, "Something passed." She followed the prints toward the birch trees. They ended near a thick trunk. The bark scraped at one point. A small piece of dark fur stuck to it. She plucked it free. She held it in her palm, thin, coarse, not from any animal here. She looked deeper into the trees. Wind knocked snow from high branches. The valley's edge looked dark, still, empty. She stepped back toward the longhouse. She entered and closed the door. The older child stood near the fire. He looked at her with concern. "Tracks?" "Yes," she said. He pulled the blanket tighter. "Not fox." "No," she said. "Not wolf," he said. "No," she said. He stared at her. "What then?" She placed the strange fur piece in a small bowl. "Something that stays low, something fast." His eyes widened. "Does it enter homes?" She knelt beside him. "Not while we stay warm." He swallowed. "It pressed near the door." She looked at the fire. "It searched for warmth." He looked toward his sleeping spot. "It walked there." "Yes," she said. He shivered from fear, not cold. Brynja stood. "We work fast today." She handed him a scraped bone tool. He walked to the wall and began scraping frost from the inside planks. Ice broke off in thin sheets and fell to the floor. She joined him at the other side. Their movements produced steady sound. Ice cracked. Frost fell. Cold lifted slightly as the fire grew. The younger child played near the bedding with a carved wooden figure shaped like a seal. He giggled at times as he pushed it across the floor. The sound warmed the space more than the fire did. Brynja scraped until sweat formed on her neck despite the cold air. She wiped her brow. She looked around. Frost still clung to some places, but the air felt lighter. She said to her son, "Good, we keep at this each morning." He nodded. "I help again later." She checked the food store. Dried fish, some barley. A small amount of root vegetables kept near the coldest part of the wall. Enough for 2 days if she rationed well. She stirred a pot of hot water over the fire. She added a handful of barley and small pieces of fish. She lifted her younger child onto her hip and stirred the pot slow. Outside, wind grew stronger. Snow brushed against the longhouse in waves. The walls creaked. The roof groaned under weight. Her older child looked up. "Storm returns." "Yes," she said. He walked to the window slit and peered out. "No one in the village walks." "Stay away from the window," Brynja said. Stepped back. She poured hot broth into bowls. She handed one to him and sat with her younger child beside the fire. They ate slow. The warmth spread through their bodies. Steam rose from the bowls. After the meal, she stood again. She walked to the door when she heard something outside. A faint shift, a slow press of snow. She lifted the fur cover a little. Nothing, only white storm. But she knew the sound. She let the door fall closed. Her son looked at her. "Again?" "Yes," he swallowed. "Does it watch us?" She kneeled beside him. "It searches the valley. We are not the only family. It presses near many homes." "Why our wall?" he asked. "I do not know," she said. She stood and looked at the fire. "I gather more wood." Her son's eyes widened. "Do not go far." She touched his cheek. "I go to the woodpile only." She wrapped her cloak tighter. She stepped outside again. The cold bit hard into her face. Snow hit her cloak with force. She pushed through it toward the woodpile. She dug through the snow with stiff hands. She lifted as many pieces of wood as she could carry. Then she heard it. A soft shift beside the longhouse. Then another. She looked over her shoulder. Nothing moved. She walked faster back to the door. She stepped inside and shut it behind her. Her son stood near the fire. "Mother?" She set the wood down. "It moves near the trees." He wrapped his arms around his body. "Can it break walls?" "No," she said. "Our walls hold." "But the cold," he said. "The cold enters." She nodded. "We fight it with fire, with work, with watch." She repeated the words her own mother told her as a girl. He sat near the bedding. He pulled his brother close. Brynja sat by the fire. She listened. The wind howled outside. Snow struck the walls. The cold pressed at the seams again. Ice began forming along the roof beams once more. She watched her children huddle together. She watched the fire crackle low. She watched frost creep along the far wall. She whispered, "Winter tests us." She heard another sound. Not storm, not snow. Steps. Slow, soft, close. She held her breath. She waited. She reached for the nearest stick and fed the fire again. Flames rose. Warmth grew. The steps faded. Her heart slowed. She moved to her children and sat beside them. Her older child leaned against her side. Her younger leaned against her chest. She wrapped her cloak around all three of them. The longhouse felt too cold, too still, too watched. She whispered, "Tonight we stay awake." Night pressed against the longhouse like a second roof, heavy, cold, relentless. Brynja sat by the fire with both children wrapped in furs on either side of her. She placed her hands on their backs. She listened to their breath, slow, soft, uneven from the cold. She fed the fire with small sticks because large logs burned too fast. The flames flickered low. Their shadows danced along the frosted walls. Her older child whispered, "Mother, do not sleep." "I stay awake," Brynja said. He nodded and rested his head on her shoulder. The wind outside did not howl now. It whispered against the wood. It scraped in long strokes. The cold pressed through the seams. Frost grew on the inside of the door. Ice spread under the window slit in delicate lines. Brynja stared at that growing ice. She felt dread sink into her ribs. "It grows faster." Her older child pulled the blanket tighter. "Because something moves outside." "Yes," Brynja said. A shift came from the far side of the wall. A soft press, a slow step, something testing the wood, something searching for warmth. Brynja held her children closer. She whispered into their hair, "Quiet." The fire cracked. The steps paused. She watched the wall. Thin frost grew thicker in one spot. The wood dimmed with cold. Her breath caught. Then the step moved again, away this time, slow, heavy, toward the birch trees. Brynja exhaled slow. Her older child whispered, "It hurt us." "It hears warmth," she said. Her younger child stirred. She stroked his hair until he fell still. Hours passed. The fire shrank. Brynja added more sticks. She kept her eyes open through each minute. She waited for dawn. But dawn held slow hands in this season. Dark stretched longer than thought. Near midnight, another sound came. A scrape across the roof. Brynja stiffened. She pressed her hand against her son's back. The scrape dragged across timber. Snow fell from the ceiling in soft bursts. Something walked across the roof. Not fox, not bird. The steps sounded too heavy, too deliberate. The older child whispered, "It climbs." "I know," Brynja said. Another scrape, another slow press, then silence. Brynja stood. "Stay here," her children grabbed her cloak. "Do not leave us," her son whispered. "I stay inside," she said. She walked to the back wall and placed her ear against the beam. No steps now, no breath, no weight. She lifted her eyes to the beams above. Ice formed in thicker lines. Snow dust fell from between the turf layers. She whispered, "Do not break through." She stepped back to the fire. She placed more wood. Flames rose, shadows danced. She looked at the entrance. Frost covered the hide. A thick outline of ice traced where the cold pressed strongest. "Winter worsens," she whispered. "No," her older child said. "Something presses." Brynja nodded once. "Yes." She sat with them again and pulled them close. They drifted in and out of light sleep. She stayed awake, with eyes fixed on the door. Hours passed. The storm outside grew quiet, too quiet. She stood again. She walked to the window slit. She lifted the hide slightly. Moonlight glowed through the storm clouds. Snow fell in slow flakes. Wind held its breath. The trees stood still. Then something moved between them. Brynja leaned closer. A shadow crossed from tree to tree, low to the ground, smooth in movement, faster than any animal she knew. It paused. It lifted its head. She saw a shape. Long, narrow, fur dark, eyes reflecting faint light. She dropped the hide at once. She whispered, "It watches the house." Her son sat up. "Which side?" "South," she said. "Near the birches." He swallowed. "What does it want?" She knelt beside him. "To see who lives here." The younger child whimpered. She held him close until he calmed. She stood again. She needed to check the back of the longhouse. She lifted the hide near the sleeping area and stepped into the small rear space. The air colder here, frost thicker. She pressed her ear against the back wall. Nothing. She moved to the side wall. Nothing. She stood still. She listened to the silence. Then she heard it. A faint crunch. Farther away this time. Maybe moving toward another home. She stepped back to the main room. Her older child whispered, "Gone?" "For now," she said. He held his brother close. Brynja sat near the fire again. She watched the flames fight the cold. She heard wind return in soft waves. Snow brushed against the walls like hands. She whispered, "We leave when light returns." Her son looked up. "Leave?" She nodded. "To the main longhouse." He shook his head. "Too cold outside." She stroked his hair. "Warmer there. Others sit close together. Fire stays strong." He swallowed. "But the tracks." "We move fast," she said. The younger child's eyes widened. "Outside," she kissed his head. "Only when sun rises." They stayed awake until dawn's faint glow touched the snow outside. Brynja packed a fur bundle with food, small tools, and the wooden figure. She wrapped each child in thick hides. She covered their faces with cloth to shield them from the cold. She stepped to the door and lifted the fur. Cold air rushed in. She gripped her older child's hand. She held her younger child against her hip. "Stay close," she said. They stepped outside. Cold sliced through every layer. Snow rose almost to her thigh. Wind pushed against her side. She moved toward the village path with slow, careful steps. She looked back once. Tracks from the night wound around the house. Deep, long, too straight for animal, too narrow for human. One set circled twice. One pressed toward the sleeping window. One trailed toward the trees. Her son saw her look and whispered, "It waited for us." She squeezed his hand. "We walk fast." They reached the village path. Snow packed lower here from foot traffic. Smoke rose from longhouse chimneys. She saw 2 neighbors outside breaking ice from a roof beam. One of them waved. "Brynja, storm eased. Cold worse, though." Brynja nodded. "We moved to the main house, walls thin on ours." He frowned. "Your walls held for years," she whispered. "Not this night." He stepped closer. "Tracks?" She nodded. "Outside all night." His face tightened. "Not wolf?" "No," she said. He lowered his voice. "We heard sounds too, steps near the storage house. Something pressed the door." She looked toward the main longhouse. "We sit together today." He nodded. "Safety in crowd." She moved with her children toward the main longhouse. Several families entered through the wide entrance. Heat and smoke poured out. Brynja stepped inside. Warmth hit them immediately. The difference felt like stepping from ice into soil. The fire in the center pit burned high. Families sat wrapped in furs around it. Children slept against parents. Old men sharpened tools. Women stirred pots of hot broth. One woman looked at Brynja. "You look frozen." "We heard steps," Brynja said. "We all heard them," the woman whispered. "Something moved between houses." Another man nodded from across the fire. "Something heavy, something low, not man, not wolf." Another added, "Something pressed against my door. My dog hid under the bed." Brynja sat with her children near the fire. She held them close. Heat softened their frozen cheeks. Their hands warmed, their breath steadied. One of the elders spoke. "Winter takes animals far from their places. Hunger drives strange movement." Another shook his head. "Not this. This moves with thought." An older woman stirred the pot. "Something walks the valley that did not walk it before." The room fell quiet. Brynja whispered, It pressed every seam of my wall. The older woman looked at her. It searched for weak places, same as last night with mine. An elder spoke again. We watched tonight together. Brynja nodded. Her children leaned against her sides, their faces pressed into her cloak. She looked up at the roof beams. Smoke drifted slow along the rafters. Heat settled into the ground. People whispered, fear mixed with relief inside the warm space. Brynja whispered, "We stay alive." As she said the words, the door to the main longhouse lifted. A man entered. He held something in his hand, a small clump of dark fur, the same kind Brynja found on the birch tree. He dropped it into the fire. The fur curled and burned with sharp smell. He said, "Found this near the well." Murmurs filled the room. Brynja looked into the flames. She whispered to herself, "It searches the whole village." The main longhouse held warmth, but it also held fear. Brynja sat with her children close to the fire while whispers drifted through the room like cold smoke. People glanced at the door often. Each time the hide moved with wind, shoulders tensed and hands tightened around bowls or tools. Brynja watched the flames rise and fall. She listened to the crackle. She listened to the breath of her children. She listened to the soft hum of families holding fear close and trying not to show it. Her older child pressed his hand into hers. "Do we stay here all day?" "Yes," Brynja said. "We stay until danger fades." He nodded, but kept his eyes on the door. A loud crack sounded outside. Everyone froze. The elder nearest the entrance stood up. He stepped toward the door and lifted the hide an inch. Cold rushed in. Snow blew across the floor. He lowered the hide fast. A beam broke near the storage house. Another man stood. "Wind?" The elder shook his head. "No wind strong enough." Murmurs rose. Brynja held her younger child tighter. "Stay close to me." The door rustled again, this time from wind. Children pressed into their parents. The fire snapped with bright sparks. The older woman who stirred the broth knelt near Brynja. "How long did it stay at your wall last night?" Brynja kept her voice low. "Hours. It moved slow. It pressed each wall. It scraped the roof." The older woman closed her eyes. "It tests our homes." "Yes," Brynja said. Another villager approached. "My sheep broke free before dawn. The door to the pen opened on its own." A man across the fire said, "Opened? Not broken?" "Opened," the villager said. "Latch lifted. Gate swung out." The elder spoke again. "Something with hands." Silence spread through the longhouse. Brynja's son whispered, "It opens doors." She stroked his hair. "We have strong doors here." He leaned against her and hid his face. Brynja looked toward the entrance. She studied the hide. Ice formed along its edges. Frost grew in thin lines across the wood behind it. The cold from outside pressed hard again. The elder approached the fire. "We plan watch." Several men stood around him. They formed a circle near the flames. The elder said, "We take turns at the door, 2 at a time, half-hour each." A man nodded. "And others watch the window slits." Another added, "Children stay near the fire. Women keep flames strong." The older woman stirred broth. "We need strength for long night." Brynja listened, but kept her eyes on the frost creeping along the beams. She watched its slow advance. It formed thicker layers than earlier. Even inside the main longhouse, the cold moved in with strange speed. The elder noticed her gaze. "You see something?" Brynja pointed at the beams. "Ice grows faster again." He looked. "We feed more wood." He grabbed a thick log and dropped it onto the fire. Sparks rose. Heat spread. Ice softened a little. Brynja whispered to her son, "Stay warm." He nodded with wide eyes. Time passed in slow steps. People took turns at the door. Brynja watched the children in the room. Some slept. Some stared at the door. Some whispered to each other. Some pressed hands against warm pottery to keep fingers soft. Snow fell harder outside. The roof shook at times. The fire hissed and cracked, but the longhouse held. Near midday, a shout came from outside. Everyone froze. The elder rushed to the door. He lifted the hide and stepped out with two men. Cold air swept through the room. The hide dropped. Brynja stood fast. She held her children's hands. She listened for footsteps. Voices rose outside. She strained to hear. Then the hide lifted again. The elder stepped in. Snow covered his shoulders. His face held tight worry. He spoke loud enough for all to hear. Tracks moved behind the storage house, more than before. Whispers erupted. A man rushed forward. More than one? Yes, the elder said. 3 sets. A woman near the fire covered her mouth. 3? Her husband stepped behind her. They grow bold. Brynja's son held her hand tighter than before. The elder continued. They gather. They move toward the well. The older woman whispered. They want water. No, the elder said. They search for weak ground. They search for open places. Brynja stepped closer. They want the center of the village. Yes, he said. The elder turned to the group. We stay together. No one walks alone. Tonight we watch with more eyes. One of the hunters spoke. Do they enter longhouses? The elder looked at Brynja. All eyes followed. Brynja took a slow breath. Not yet. A long silence followed. The elder spoke again. Fire keeps them back. Warmth stops them. Brynja added. They search for warmth but do not enter strong heat. Her son whispered. They fear fire? No, Brynja said. They fear light. People looked toward the window slits. Snow pressed against them. The light outside dimmed. The older woman stirred the pot again. Winter brings more than cold this year. Families ate broth in silence. Children listened to elders. Men sharpened tools, though they knew metal meant little against thin, fast creatures. Women kept fire high. Brynja stood and moved to the window slit on the north side. She brushed frost aside. She looked through the narrow gap. Snow swirled. Trees bent under weight. Houses stood still. Then she saw movement. Low in the snow, fast, dark, not one shape, 3 shapes. They darted between houses. They circled the well. They pressed near the storage hut again. Their bodies stretched long, their tails thin, their heads lowered close to the ground. She dropped the hide over the window slit at once. She turned to the elder. They near the well, he nodded. They test the center. They look for opening, she said. Then they do not find one, he said. Brynja returned to her children. Her older child picked at the edge of a fir, his eyes full of worry. Mother, when do they stop? When we learn what they want, Brynja said. He whispered, what if they want us? She wrapped an arm around him. Then we stay with many people. The younger child leaned against her leg. His small fingers clutched her cloak. Brynja touched his head. I keep you warm. Afternoon light dimmed. Shadows inside the longhouse grew long. Fire cracked louder as more wood fed it. People shifted in restless movements. The elder stepped near the fire again. We prepare for night watch, a man asked. All night? Yes, the elder said. They grow bold at night. Brynja looked toward the door. We need stronger bar. The elder nodded. Bring the spare beam. 2 men lifted a heavy wooden beam from the supply corner. They set it beside the door. Another man checked the hinges and reinforced the hide with rope. Night approached with heavy silence. The fire glowed bright. Families wrapped themselves in furs. Children rested heads on laps. Elders gathered near the door. Men tightened grips on tools. Brynja sat with her children at her sides. She whispered, "Stay close, stay quiet." Her son nodded. Her younger child pressed into her chest. Snow outside slowed. Wind faded. Night arrived. Then the sounds began. A soft press. A slow scrape. Along the outer wall. Someone gasped. Someone whispered a prayer. Someone lifted a tool. Brynja held both children tight. "Do not move!" The scrape slid across the wall again. Slow, careful, testing. The elder motioned everyone to silence. Another scrape. Higher this time, near the roof, then another on the other side of the longhouse. 3 creatures, 3 sets of steps, 3 bodies sliding across the turf roof. Frost grew along the beams overhead. Ice thickened near the door. A low sound came from above, not growl, not breath, a low vibration. Brynja whispered, "It listens." No one moved, no one breathed. Children held hands tight. The creatures moved along the roof again in slow circles. Snow fell from the rafters. The fire flickered as if wind touched it from above. Her son trembled. She whispered, "Do not fear, stay with me." The scrape stopped. Silence pulled tight around the room. Then a heavy thump. Near the door, people flinched. Another thump. Slow, deliberate. Then the handle of the door tugged. The room froze. Brynja pressed her children against her chest. The handle tugged again, harder. The elder stepped forward. He held a spear. He motioned 2 men beside him. Another tug. Then a long drag of claws across the door. Then nothing. Silence returned. Brynja kept her breath slow. The elder stepped back. He whispered, "They know we gather here." Brynja looked at the fire. "They want someone alone," she said. People stared at her. The elder's eyes narrowed. "Yes, they hunt the ones far from others." Brynja swallowed. Her house stood far, her yard isolated. She whispered to herself, "It went to my home first." The longhouse held through the night, but fear settled into every corner like smoke that refused to rise. Brynja kept her children close until dawn. Light pushed thin gray through the window slits. People stirred with stiff movements. They rubbed hands. They added more wood to the fire. No one spoke at first. They listened for steps outside. The elder lifted the door hide a little and peered out. Snow fell steady. The sky pale. The world silent. He closed the hide. They left before dawn. A man beside him whispered, "They return tonight." Brynja shifted her children on her lap. Her older son pushed himself up. "Do we go home now?" She shook her head. "Not yet." The elder walked toward her. "You heard them first. You know their ways." Brynja nodded. "They circle my home more than others." "Why?" the elder asked. She looked at the fire. "Our home sits alone, no other walls near it. They tested where it stands." A woman across the fire said, "They want the weak." Brynja kept her voice steady. "They want warmth, weak walls, small families." People heard the truth in her words. Some glanced away. Some looked at their own children. Some stared at the beams as frost seeped into the cracks again. The elder spoke with a firm tone. "We check each home. All families walk together. No one walks alone." Men stood. Women gathered cloaks. Children wrapped furs around their shoulders. Brynja lifted her younger child and helped her older son stand. They walked out in a tight group. Cold struck faces at once. Snow crunched under many feet. The village path stretched white and silent. Frost covered every roof. Only a few thin trails of tracks remained from the night. The elder pointed toward the storage house first. We start here. They approached the building. The door hung crooked. Snow piled inside the threshold. Claw marks scored the wood near the latch. Long, deep. One man knelt and traced the marks. Thin claws, sharp, another said, but strong enough to bend the door. Brynja stepped closer. She felt the wood. The cold still held inside it. They pressed here long, the elder nodded. They tried to enter. A woman hugged her child close. Why storage? Brynja spoke. Dark place, no fire, no watch. She stepped around the side of the building. She saw more prints in the snow. 3 sets, one at the corner, one near the back, one circling the entire structure. They circle before they strike, Brynja said. The elder walked to the back with her. Did the same at your home? Yes, she said. He looked toward her longhouse on the far edge of the village. We check yours last. She nodded. Her stomach tightened. The group moved house to house. They checked doors. They checked windows. They checked walls. Some homes held strong. Others showed claw marks. Some had deep ice pressed into seams where the creatures lingered. When they reached the last home before Brynja's, young man ran toward the group. Snow flew from his boots. Elder, he shouted, come to the river path. The elder signaled everyone to follow. Brynja carried her children as she walked behind the group. They reached the river path and saw it at once. Tracks, many. The snow pressed deep. 3 sets moved in circles. Then they split. One set moved up the path toward the hills. Another moved toward the well again. The third moved toward Brynja's home. The elder pointed. It returned before morning? Brynja stared at the tracks leading toward her yard. Wide sweeps, sharp prints, direction clear. They search for entry, she said. Her son swallowed. They walked near our sleeping place again. Yes, she said. The group moved toward Brynja's home. The snow there untouched by human steps. Only the dark tracks cut into it. They reached the yard. The sight stopped everyone. Claw marks ran across the door. Thin lines but long. 5 marks each. The hide cover frozen stiff around the edges. The roof showed patches where snow fell away. Prints ran across the top. Brynja stepped forward. Her heart tightened. She placed her hand on the door. Cold burned through the hide. A woman whispered, "It wanted to enter." Brynja nodded. "It waited. It lingered long." The elder studied the marks. 3 creatures, same as last night on the longhouse. Her son tugged her sleeve. His voice shook. "Mother, why us?" She knelt and held his face gently. "Not because of us, because we live far from others." "But why stay near?" he asked. She looked at the tracks. "They want something warm, something alive." The elder placed his hand on Brynja's shoulder. "You stay in the main longhouse again tonight, not here." Brynja shook her head. "If we leave the home empty, they enter." "They will enter anyway if you stay," the elder said. Brynja looked at him. "Then they test only walls, not flesh." He frowned. "You risk your children." Brynja stood straight. "I protect them better from inside." The elder sighed. "We strengthen the walls, many arms, many tools." Men stepped forward. "We help." Women held children near the fire pit outside, while men cut snow blocks, packed them against the outer seams, hammered frozen turf into gaps, and tied new ropes around the roof. Brynja guided them to each weak point. They reinforced until the walls thickened with new layers. While the work continued, Brynja walked around the back of the longhouse. The snow here pressed flat where something rested long. She knelt and touched the place. Cold. Too cold. Not natural. She lifted her hand and felt numbness spread through her fingers. She rubbed them until warmth returned. She whispered, "It waits here while others circle." Her older child came behind her. "Mother?" She pointed to the flattened snow. "One creature lay here." He stepped back. "Sleeping?" "No," she said. "Listening." He swallowed. "Listening for us." She took his hand. "Stay near me." They walked back to the group. As the sun dipped behind clouds, the elder announced, "Walls hold better now, but night comes." People nodded. Brynja stood near her home with her children at her sides. Snow thickened. Wind pushed in slow waves. The cold deepened again. The elder approached her. "You stay in the main longhouse tonight. Bring your children." Brynja shook her head. "If I leave, they enter." The elder lowered his voice. "You stay, they challenge you." Brynja stared at her home. "They already challenge." He exhaled slow. "We leave 5 men outside your home tonight. They keep fire near the door." Brynja touched his arm. "Fire outside, fire inside. That helps." He nodded. The men gathered branches and lit a large fire pit near her door. Flames rose high. Smoke drifted upward in steady lines. The light pushed the dark back for a small space around the longhouse. Brynja stepped inside with her children. She built another fire in the center pit. She placed furs along the floor near the warmest spot. She moved water closer. She checked the walls again. Her older child whispered, "We stay awake." "No," she said. "We sleep in turns. I keep first watch." He nodded. Her younger child clung to her cloak. She stroked his hair. "I stay near." Outside, men sat by the fire. Their silhouettes moved across the window slit. They talked in low tones. Their presence eased her heart. But when night fell, the sounds returned. Soft presses, long scrapes, low movements across snow. Brynja stood near the window slit. She lifted the hide a little. She saw them, 3 shapes, low, dark, moving in slow circles around her yard. Their bodies dipped close to the snow, their tails dragged behind them, their heads lifted toward the walls. Their eyes caught the firelight in faint glimmers. She dropped the hide. Her heart pounded. She turned to her children. "Stay near the fire." Her older son nodded and pulled his brother close. Outside, one of the men spoke. "Steps to the east," another shouted. "Hold the fire high." Flames roared as men fed the pit with more branches. Light grew stronger, shadows danced wide, but the creatures kept circling. They ignored the men. They watched the house. They watched the walls. They pressed low to the ground, waiting for warmth to fail. Brynja placed her hand on the wall. The frost grew faster than before. The creatures pressed harder now. She whispered, "Tonight they test all." She lifted her eyes toward the roof beams. Frost thickened there too. She whispered to herself, "We hold through night." Her children huddled near the fire, eyes wide, breaths short. She knelt beside them. "Stay brave, stay silent." The steps outside grew louder. 3 creatures, 3 sets of claws, 3 bodies watching her home. Night settled with more weight than any before. The fire outside Brynja's door lit the snow in slow orange waves, but it did not push the dark far. The men tending it sat with stiff backs and watchful eyes. Their breath rose in clouds. Their hands stayed on spears, though they knew spears meant little against shadows that moved without sound. Inside, Brynja stood with her hand on the wall. Frost spread across the wood in a thin white map. Lines crawled outward from the seams. She felt the cold deepen. It reached the ground. It climbed the beams. It filled the air until breathing hurt. Her children huddled near the fire pit, their eyes wide, their bodies tense under the furs. Mother, her older child whispered. They press harder. Yes, Brynja said. They wait for silence. He swallowed. We do not give silence. She shook her head. We hold fire strong. Fire tells them we live. The younger child curled against her leg. She lifted him and held him close. His hands shook. She pressed her cheek to his hair. Outside, one of the men shouted. Movement to the west, another answered. Raise fire. Flames burst higher as they threw more branches in. Sparks rose into the night. The wind carried them upward. Brynja stepped to the window slit and lifted the hide a finger's width. She saw the shapes again. 3. Low to the ground. They circled beyond the firelight. They moved slow, careful. Their bodies slid across the snow without any sound. Their tails left thin lines. One paused. Its head turned toward the window. Its eyes reflected the fire. Brynja dropped the hide. Her breath caught. Her skin prickled with fear. She walked back to the fire pit. They know where we stand, she whispered. Her son shook. Mother, will they break in? No, she said. Not if fire stays strong. He leaned against her. She rested a hand on his shoulder. Outside, the creatures moved again. Their steps created faint crunches. The men shouted warnings. The fire roared, but the creatures stayed patient. They waited for fire to weaken. They waited for warmth to settle low. Brynja fed more wood into the fire. The flames rose high. The heat softened the frost on the nearest wall. But the frost far from the fire thickened still. She whispered, They press from many sides. Her older child pointed at the far wall. Mother, the frost there grows fast. She walked to it. Her fingers touched the wood. It burned from cold. She pulled back fast. Her fingertips stung. They press behind this one, she said. Her son whispered. All of them? No, Brynja said. Only one. Others watch. The younger child whimpered. She held him tight. His breath came quick. She stroked his back until he steadied. A heavy scrape hit the back wall. Slow, hard. The entire longhouse shook. Her older son gasped. It tries to break through. Brynja grabbed a wooden beam from beside the sleeping firs. We brace it. She pressed the beam diagonally against the wall. Her son helped hold it steady. The wall shook again. The beam held. The creature outside pressed harder. The frost spread in thicker lines. Another scrape came from the left side, another from the roof. The creatures tested all sides now. They circled, they pushed, they pressed with slow rhythm. Brynja whispered, They grow desperate. Her son's voice shook. Why tonight? She looked at the fire. Because we strengthened walls. They test our strength. Another scrape, another shake. Snow fell from the beams inside. Then something new, a long, slow drag along the roof. Not claws, not steps, a heavy body pushing across the turf. Brynja stared up. Ice formed in long arcs. The roof sagged slightly in one spot. No, she whispered, not the roof. Her son whispered, They go above us. She pressed her children close. Stay by the fire, do not move. She stepped under the sagging beam. She touched the wood. Cold seeped through it like water. The weight above shifted again. Snow fell in clumps inside. Outside, a man shouted, One on the roof! Hold the fire bright! Another yelled, I see its tail! Flames roared again as they threw more branches into the pit. The light burst outward, shadows scattered, but the creature did not move off the roof. It pressed harder. Brynja stepped back. She looked at the fire. We need brighter flame. She grabbed the last of the thick logs. She dropped them in. Flames surged. Heat pushed outward. Light reached the roof beams. The scraping stopped. Then slow steps moved across the roof again, toward the front. Brynja whispered, "It goes to the door." She rushed to the entrance. She held the hide still. The bar across the door trembled. Outside, men shouted. "It tries the entrance!" Another man yelled. "Hold it back!" A thud struck the door. The bar shook. Brynja pressed her shoulder against the wood. Her son rushed to help. The younger child clung to her leg. Another thud hit. Harder. The hide lifted a little at the bottom. Cold air swept inside. Frost spread across the doorframe in seconds. Brynja shouted through the wood, "Feed fire! Feed now!" The men outside threw more wood on the flames. The fire roared so high, sparks reached the roof. The pressure on the door eased. Another creature hissed from the side of the house. A long, low sound that chilled Brynja's spine. It scraped its claws along the wall. The wall trembled. Her son whispered, "They speak to each other." "Yes," she said. Footsteps circled again. The roof creature moved back. One pressed against the back wall. One pressed against the front. Brynja looked at her fire. She threw more sticks in. Heat pulsed. She held her children close. The night stretched long. Scrapes came and went. Presses against the walls rose and fell. Sometimes silence filled the yard. Sometimes the creatures moved in slow circles. Sometimes the fire outside dimmed, and the creatures pressed harder. Sometimes the flames rose, and the creatures backed away. Brynja stayed awake through every sound. Her older child leaned against her shoulder, his eyes heavy but open. Her younger child slept lightly with quick breaths. She kept a hand on him always. The creatures stayed until dawn. When daylight grew through the window slits, the steps faded. The scrapes slowed. The pressure on the door eased. Snow shifted outside, then stilled. A man outside shouted, "They flee!" Brynja dropped to her knees from exhaustion. She held her children and breathed through shaking chest. "They leave?" her son asked. "For now," Brynja said. She stood and lifted the hide at the door. The light of dawn spilled across the snow. The three men outside stood with spears and exhausted faces. Their fire burned low now, their eyes heavy. Tracks surrounded the longhouse, deep, sharp. The roof showed marks where something heavy rested. The walls held thick frost lines. Her son stepped out behind her. "Mother, they almost broke in." She placed her hand on his back. "But they did not," one of the men approached. "They moved between houses before dawn. They test every home now." The elder arrived from the main longhouse. His beard held frost, his eyes sharp. He looked at Brynja's home. "You held them back." "With fire," Brynja said. "Not strength," he nodded. "Tonight we form larger watch." Brynja looked at her children. "No, tonight I go where they sleep." The elder frowned. "Where they sleep?" She pointed at the tracks leading toward the hill. "They come from the forest. They rest there. They wait there. They plan from there." The elder stared at her. "Brynja, you walk toward danger." She met his eyes. "If I do not, danger comes again and again." Her son grabbed her cloak. "Mother," she held his hand gently. "I leave you in safety. I return before dark." "No," he said. "You cannot." She knelt. "I must learn why they watch our home, why they press our walls, why they move with thought." Her younger child clung to her arm. Tears filled his eyes. Brynja held them both. "I walk for you." The elder stepped forward. "Then you do not walk alone." He looked at the men near the fire. "Two join her." They nodded. Brynja stood. She gripped her cloak tight. She looked toward the forest, toward the quiet dark where the creatures fled, toward the place where the cold felt oldest. she whispered. I follow the path they hide. Brynja stepped toward the forest with slow, measured steps, two men beside her and the village fading behind them in the rising daylight. The snow lay deep. The wind brushed the trees with soft pressure. No tracks from normal game appeared on the ground. Only the long, thin marks left by the three creatures. They crossed the river path, wound between birch trunks, and vanished into the darker pine woods. The elder stood at the edge of the village, watching them leave. Brynja did not look back again. Her breath rose in slow clouds. Her children stood near the main longhouse door, wrapped in furs, holding hands. She placed their faces in her heart and walked forward. The men beside her said nothing. They kept their spears in hand. They followed her steps exactly, placing their feet where she placed hers. The cold inside the forest held heavier weight than the cold of the open valley. Shadows clung to low branches. Snow gathered in thick piles. The trees stood silent and tall. Brynja knelt near the first thick track. The pressed snow held the shape well. Long, deep, thin claws spread at the front. The path turned slightly toward the north. She stood. They run this way. One man whispered, Why run toward deep woods? Brynja kept moving. They returned to where the cold strongest. The men glanced at each other, but followed. They walked for a long time. The forest grew darker. The wind died completely. The only sound came from snow shifting under their boots. Brynja scanned each tree. She listened for faint breaths. She watched the branches above for movement. Then she stopped. A tree trunk ahead showed scratches, high, deep, thin lines cut through bark, similar to the marks on her home, but older. These scratches froze over. Snow clung to the stripped bark. One man touched them. They marked territory. Brynja stared. They warned others. The scratches formed a pattern, a wide curve, 3 long lines beneath, a shape like a sign, but she did not know its meaning. She whispered, This marks their boundary. The man stepped back. Then inside this place they rest. Brynja walked around the tree. She looked deeper into the woods. The ground sloped downward. The trees grew closer. The path ahead darkened. She continued. As they walked farther, they found more signs. Stripped branches, broken small logs, snow pressed in wide, flat shapes where bodies rested. Brynja knelt and touched one of these spots. The cold there felt sharper than ice. Her fingers numbed fast. She pulled her hand back. They slept here, she said. The men looked worried. One whispered, We walk into their home. Brynja stood. Not home, waiting place. They walked farther. The slope deepened. Rocks jutted from the snow. A narrow gap between 2 boulders opened ahead. The tracks led straight inside. Brynja stopped. She stared at the narrow entrance. Snow drifted inside it. The cold poured from it like breath. The prints pressed deep here, as if creatures entered often. One man whispered, This their den. Brynja shook her head. Not den, passage. She knelt and touched the entrance stone. Frost covered it. Her hand burned from the cold. She stood again. We go inside, she said. The men swallowed, but nodded. They lowered their spears and stepped behind her. Brynja bent low and entered the passage. The air changed at once. It grew colder, still, heavy. The tunnel curved downward. Snow covered the floor thinly here. Frost laced the stone walls. The prince moved straight ahead. She whispered to the men, Follow slow, watch all sides. They moved in silence. No wind entered. No sound reached them. Only their footsteps, slow, careful, soft. They rounded a bend, light reflected from the far end, not bright, not fire, a pale glow, cold in tone. Brynja stepped closer. The tunnel opened into a chamber. Her breath caught. The chamber held ice across its walls. Thick layers rose like frozen waves. Frost clung to the ceiling. The air hung sharp, bitter, hard to breathe. Snow covered the ground in thin sheets. And in the center stood a long, low nest of branches, roots, and frozen grass. 3 hollow spaces sat inside it, each shaped like a curled body. The men froze behind her. Brynja whispered, "They sleep here." She walked closer. She examined the nest. The branches cracked under her fingers, the grass frozen stiff. The hollow spaces free of snow. The warmth of bodies once held here burned into the air long after those bodies left. One man stepped back, fear rising in his breath. "If they return?" "They left before dawn," Brynja said. "We follow signs from last night." The other man pointed toward the roof. "See there!" Brynja looked up. Claw marks streaked the frost above. Hundreds of thin lines, some fresh, some older, a pattern of movement. She whispered, "They stretch upward. They climb often." She followed the lines with her eyes. They converged toward a narrow gap high in the stone wall near the ceiling. A tunnel, higher than any man could reach, leading deeper. The men looked at her, their faces pale. Brynja studied the marks again. The creatures climbed this path nightly. She would not fit through this upper tunnel. The men would not fit either. The creatures lived in narrow passages meant for their bodies alone. One man whispered, "We should leave before dark." Brynja shook her head. "Not yet." She stepped around the nest. She scanned the walls. She searched for signs of reason. Why these creatures watched her home. Why they circled the village. Why they pressed doorways. Then she saw something in the corner, a pile of wood. No, not wood. Objects. Old, frozen, covered in frost. She knelt and brushed snow away. Tools, human tools, a broken wooden bowl, a torn scrap of wool, a small bone carving shaped like a horse, a cracked horn spoon, a missing shoe from a child. The men stepped backward with fear. Brynja touched the bowl. "These from the valley," the other pointed. "That carving, old Thorgils lost one like it last winter." Brynja swallowed. "They collect what they find." "Why collect?" a man whispered. Brynja did not answer. She found more objects, scraps of hide, pieces of rope, a fragment of metal broken from a knife. Her breath shook. "Not trophies." The men leaned closer. "Their nest holds things from humans," Brynja said. "Not from hunger, from search." The men stared with growing confusion. Brynja stood. She looked at the 3 hollow spaces again. She studied the shape left in the snow. She traced the lines with her eyes. Then she understood. "They seek warmth," she said, "but not only warmth." The men waited. "They seek voices," she said, "movement, breathing, they follow sound." One man asked, "Why?" Brynja stepped closer to the sleeping hollows. "Because they hunt what breathes strong when cold thick." The men grew pale. "But why my home?" Brynja whispered to herself. Her hands trembled as she searched the chamber again. She found the answer near the far wall, a small hollow in the stone. Inside it lay something wrapped in frost. She reached in and pulled it free, a piece of fur from her own home. She staggered back. The men gasped. "They took from your house," one man said. Brynja stared at the fur. Her breath shook. "They entered before, not inside, but they pressed close enough to pull this from our sleeping place." The men looked toward the tunnel entrance. "They mark you." "Yes," Brynja said. "They know our scent. They watch our fire. They remember our walls." The men stepped back. Then we must leave now. Brynja did not move. She turned the fur piece in her hand. Cold burned through her palm. She placed it inside her cloak. She whispered, "They test our fear. They test our warmth. They test how we respond." A noise echoed from the upper tunnel, a faint scrape. The men froze. Another scrape, closer. Snow fell from the ceiling. Frost cracked. Brynja looked at the tunnel opening. "They return." The men stepped behind her. "We must go." The scrape grew louder. Then 3 long breaths, slow, heavy, cold. Brynja whispered, "They know we found this place." The men pulled her arm. "Brynja, now!" She pocketed the fur and ran back toward the entrance tunnel. The men followed. Snow shifted beneath their feet. Frost fell behind them. The scrapes faded, then strengthened again. They climbed up the passage and burst into the forest light. Brynja gasped for air. The men staggered behind her. The forest held silence again. The tracks behind them changed. Fresh, descending. Brynja's eyes widened. "They follow!" The men panicked. "Run!" Brynja ran through the trees faster than the men expected. She forced breath through the rising cold. She held her cloak tight. She ran toward the village, following the slope upward, breaking through low branches, pushing through snow. Behind them, faint shapes moved between shadows, low, fast, close. The men saw them and shouted for speed. Brynja reached the last birch tree. The village appeared ahead. Smoke from the main longhouse rose into the air. People stood outside working. She shouted, "Inside, now!" Villagers looked up. Shock spread across their faces. The men behind her cried out, "They follow!" Brynja reached the first home. She pushed her children toward the main longhouse door. The elder grabbed them. Inside, people rushed, doors shut, bars dropped, fires rose. Brynja turned back toward the forest. 3 shapes stood at the edge of the trees, still, watching, not attacking, waiting. Her breath stilled. She understood now. "They do not hunt at random," she said. "They study." The elder stepped beside her. "Then what do they want?" Brynja looked at the fur in her hand. "They want what breathes strongest," she said. "What stands against cold. What grows warm when fear grows." The elder looked at her children. "Then they want—" "No," Brynja said. "Not them." She looked at her own breath, rising white into the air. "They want me." The creatures moved backward into the trees without sound. Their eyes held no hunger now, only purpose. Brynja lowered her head. She whispered, "Winter not done with us." You walked with Brynja through cold that reached bone and fear that moved through snow like breath. You watched her face shadows that studied her more than they hunted her. Her story ends here for now, but winter in the valley still waits. In our next video, you meet another soul who held fire against strange nights. A small gift waits for you there. Take a slow breath. Let warmth settle in you, and carry calm into your night.